Hey Jeepers, I just put a new bearing on the end of this axle shaft and a new seal with the help of a buddy with a press. In this video I'm going to show you how to get these out, how to get the old bearing off, and how to get them back in. Alright, cool. Alright, so we got to take the brake hardware off to get the axle shaft out. And the axle shaft is held in by a retaining plate, which I will show you as best I can once we get this off. Alright, so I got the brake hardware off. Now, behind this flange is the retaining plate I was just talking about. There's a little hole in the flange that you can get through to get to the nuts that hold the retaining plate on. You just need to line the shaft or the flange up with the nut. The nut is a 13 millimeter, 14 millimeter. Four of the nuts are out. They never did bolt them. At this point the axle shaft can come out of the body. My magical assistant has handed me a hammer to do so. There it goes. And there it is, one axle shaft. So this is the seal I'm in here to replace. This is the bearing, which is unreasonably loose, I think. Same as the other side was. I think these are just really shot. I think I'm going to get some smoother ride when I finish this. And this is the retainer. All of this has to come off in order to replace just the gear roll drift on me again. To replace the seal. So basically, this has to get cut or whatever, or this has to get pressed off. What I'm going to attempt to do is to break this by drilling a hole into it and then breaking it with a chisel. I'll try to record that at some point and get that added to the video, but this has to get off of here, then this comes off, and then a whole new assembly gets pressed back on. I'm going to replace the backing plate while I'm at it too. Also, if you're in here to replace the backing plate here, this all comes right off once you have these 4 bolts out. Let me get in to see the bolts. Let's get some light. These are the 4 studs I was talking about and the nuts that go on them. I'll probably finger tighten them back on until we're done here. You can see things get dirty in here. I might clean all this up before I put it all back together. But yeah, so at its core, that's how you get an axle shaft out of a D44 in order to replace the seals or bearings, or because of a broken shaft. If you're unaware, this is how it makes to the inside of your carrier. These splines slide right in. You didn't stop the video, did you? Okay. These splines slide right in, and then this is all that holds your axle shaft from sliding out. In a non-C-clipped axle, this is pretty much how it usually works, unless it's like a full float or something where you've got a bearing retainer on the outside. Alright, on to the next thing, huh? Alright, so now we have the axle shafts taken out. As you can see, I have one here in my bench vise. I just finished one of these, so I'm going to show you how to get the bearing off. Okay, so there's, if you can see this from where you are, there's this retainer that has to come off, the bearing retainer. There's the bearing itself, which, I mean, this thing is just shot. And then there's the seal. I mean, the seal is easy to get off because it just sort of slides on and off. And then, of course, the backing plate. So all this stuff has to come off in order to replace the seal, because that's what's really bad. But in this case, it looks like these bearings are pretty shot anyway. I sort of expected that just because of noise I was hearing from the back end of the Jeep. So this is a messy job just because there's gear oil everywhere. If you don't like gear oil, wear gloves. Personally, I've been exposed to so much gear oil in my life that I really don't care. So first things first, I'm going to use a Dremel to cut through the bearing. So I'm going to replace the cutting disc on the Dremel because I just finished the other shaft and I destroyed the cutting disc on my Dremel. So let's do that quick. You may be able to get away with using something a little more robust than a Dremel, but to be honest, Dremel seems fitting because if you cut too far through these things, you're going to cut into your axle shaft. So I'd much rather have a tool that enables a little more finesse. Maybe you're really good with an angle grinder and you can get away with it. Personally, I just don't want to take the chance. I'm pretty good with an angle grinder, but I just don't feel like it's worth the chance. So first of all, like I said, this retainer is pressed on. If you try to tap it off without cutting it, it shouldn't move. And it doesn't. So I learned a trick on another YouTube channel, a few of them actually, where you basically remove some material from one side of this thing and use a chisel to break it. And once it's broken, it releases the tension and it slides right off. So to do that, I need my center punch. If you've ever drilled into metal, you understand this concept here. I'm going to use a center punch to make a little bit of a dent to basically get my drill bit to seat. Yep, got a nice dent there. And then I take a smaller drill bit than I finished with, just to start the hole. Okay, it started. I'll switch to the bigger drill bit. Now this is a 1/2-inch drill bit. It is just about as wide as this retainer ring is. So I'm going to drill through it. You may be able to do a better job of this with an actual drill press. I don't have a drill press, unfortunately, so I do make do with what I have. So what you're going to end up with is this bit is going to get up to the edges of this retaining ring. Alright, so I finished drilling my hole. I'm going to pull you off the tripod to show you something. I actually didn't have to use my chisel because I got it just right. At least I hope I got it just right. So here. Now you're going to see, as I tilt down here, you'll see the hole I drilled, and you'll see the little crack, the fissure right at the bottom there. What I had intended to happen was I was going to drill in just far enough, and then I was going to use a chisel to cause that to crack in half. What happened was, as you can see, the hole is just a little bit off center, so one side is through the side of the retainer, and the other side wasn't. So I took a Dremel and I scored. Let's see if I can show you at a different angle. I scored through the side. There, you see that? I cut through the side of it. And when I started to cut down through there, pretty much as soon as I got to the base of the hole that I had drilled, I ended up, it just cracked. So at this point I should be able to push this off. Here, I'll show you. This should just sort of slide off. See? Alright, there you go. See it moving? So now the next task is to get this bearing out of here. And what I do with that is I took a Dremel and I scored all the way through here, and then I did it again on the other side. See, this is a separate ring here. You can see it moving. I scored this ring on one side, flipped it over, scored it on the other side, and then pull it off. and then score through here on one side, do the same thing on the other, and pull it off. And then you end up with the inner race of the bearing, which you just basically have to really carefully score with a Dremel, and then flip the axle shaft over and score it on the other side with a Dremel, and do sort of what you did here, where you get it to crack. Once it does that, you can slide it off, and once it slides off, well, there you go. Then you should have this free and clear. Then you can clean up all these areas, and once they're clean, you can put on your new bearing. So I'm going to put you back on the tripod, and we will continue. Okay, you probably saw it grab. That's because I had cut through the ring, and the ring pinched on the Dremel. Flip it over, cut it on the other side, and then you'll see the ring will come right off. Okay, it's cut through one half of the ring. There's the other half of the ring. This is a nice machined steel, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a bucket that I've been throwing scrap in. This will be good at the recycler. Don't just throw the stuff away, guys. It's good for recycling. Okay. Another thing I want to know, you see the blue tape I have on here? I labeled passenger and driver. I don't know about this model, the D44. I'll check for clarity once I am done here. But I know in the last 44 I had, which was out of a Cherokee, the passenger side and the driver side shafts were just slightly different length, like an inch or an inch and a half, something like that. So label them when you pull them out. This is the passenger side shaft I'm working on right now. Okay, so back to the Dremel we go. Come through this side. I'm going to flip it over and get the other side. Okay, now we should have two halves of a bearing here. A little bit hot. I'm trying to do this without losing all the pieces. Ooh, a little bit hot. And I lost a piece. Oh well. And another one. There we go. The inside of an axle bearing. Clean up all the little pieces I dropped. Okay. Now I'll show you what we're up against again. So what we have now is, this is the inner race of the bearing. Okay, so all those little cylinders ride around this, just like that outer race that I showed you in the that's still in the axle that I haven't gotten out yet. Now what I need to do here is score this with the Dremel, and then flip it over and score the other side. And essentially what I'm going to do is get the exact same thing done that I did here, where I cut through this and then broke it. So I'm going to score it with the Dremel, and then try to get through it that way. So there we go. Another thing of note, if you don't like the smell of gear oil, you might want to put on a mask for all this. I've been exposed to so much of it in my life that it doesn't bother me. For all I know, I'm poisoning myself. So safety first, guys. One thing I found working with the other side is that my chisels are not of a hard enough steel to do much damage to these things. So that was a bit of a difficulty that I ran into. You'll see that my chisel is not looking all that great after having dealt with this. So luckily they're not expensive chisels, I can put new edges on them with the angle grinder, or with the bench grinder, so I'm not too worried about it. Next side. Once you get it scored a little bit, you may be able to pound it down just a little bit to get it away from this the next step on the axle shaft. I recommend doing that as soon as you can, because it'll give you more room to cut without damaging your axle shaft. I remember where I put my hammer. Ah, there it is under my rag. See if I can do that. I hope so. Not yet. It's not moving. Okay, let's flip it over and, well, let me score this side a little more and then we'll flip it over into the other side. So I'm almost through this thing on this side. We're going to score the other side same way we did this side. Oh, we already did. I'm going to cut this one a little deeper. Sorry, what I meant to say. Well, we're pretty good on that side too. I think what we're going to do is try to tap it down again. See what happens. Pull this takes on the tip of the chisel. That's also why I recommend safety goggles when you're doing this. Protect those eyes. To cut any more material out. What I don't want to have happen is scoring over the action Alright, see what I can do. When you think it's not going to work, it works. So, see what I did here? You see how the results are? Now, you see that? I cut through there. I can't turn this bare hands, but I did the same thing on the other side. And then I basically went in there with the chisel until it cracked what was left of the material at the bottom. And now this is where it was sitting. You can see there's no marring. There's a little bit of a ding there from the chisel, but I don't think that'll be a problem. Now the bearing or the seal can slide right off. That, of course, and I'm just going to basically clean this up really well so that when the new seal goes on, it has a nice smooth surface to mate to. And the same down here with the bearing. I'm going to clean this up with some brake clean and whatnot and get that all clean. And then this stuff can all come off, the new stuff goes on, and then I got to take it to my buddy who's got a press. and then he'll press this and the bearing back into place, and then we can reinstall everything. So all in all, this isn't a difficult job. It's just sort of time consuming. If you do this the right way, you can do it without damaging anything. It just takes a little bit of patience and a little bit of ingenuity, right? So yeah, I'm going to stop the video for now, and I will pick this up once I have some more to show you guys. Alright, so when we pulled the axle shaft out, I mentioned that there's this bearing race still in here. We got to get that out yet. So I went to Advance Auto and rented this awesome slide hammer. Basically, this thing, as you tighten it, it pushes these fingers outward, and that grabs onto the inside of the bearing race. So I'm going to do that. This is a bit tricky to get lined up just right. And we found, oh look, it's coming right out. Hey Blaine, this side's coming out easy.
Of course.
So on the other side, what we had to do was basically position this with one of them upward, hit it a few times, then flip it over and hit it. I'll just give you a demonstration. This is probably going to pop right out of here though. See that? This side has been bad for demonstration. This happened on the other video too.
We could hammer it in.
Yeah, let's hammer it back in. So that's a bearing race. This is the outer side of the bearing. Goes over top of that, sloped edge. On the other side, it was really tough to get out, but on this side, no, it just came right out.
The picks would have worked.
Yeah, right. Which supports. A buddy told me I should be able to pull them out by hand, and if that's not enough, I should have been able to use something like this pick. Just pull it right out, and that didn't work on the other side, so well, whatever. Slide hammers are fun anyway. Oh. That'll be fun. Okay.
What just fell in the bucket?
Dirt, I think.
Hopefully.
I hope it was dirt. Okay, now we can put the new shaft in. So, this backing plate on the shaft has this little notch. The notch goes down, because you can see that these are closer together than the bottom ones. The bottom ones are further apart. I found that out on the other side. You did remember to label your axle shafts, right? No, not a word. This slides right in. On the other side, the bearing race really just popped right in there. We'll see if that's the case over here or not. Now this is kind of tricky since I left the brake hardware on here. Try to get this lined up is a little bit of a difficult thing. There we go. Splines are lined up. And one of these studs is a little loose. That makes it fun. Now, here's the tricky part. Getting these nuts back on here. You have to go through the hole again, and then you got to get the nut threaded on there where you can't get your finger in there. So what we figured out on the other side was take a piece of paper towel, stuff it into your socket. Maybe a little more than that. To make it a little less deep than it's supposed to be. Then you take your nut and set it on top of the paper towel you've stuffed in there. And now we can go through this and onto the stud. So first we have to position this hole though. There goes the dogs. By the way, if you take the time to disconnect your drive shaft, this will be a lot easier to turn. Blaine and I figured that out. But we still didn't take the time to disconnect the drive shaft, because that's how we roll. Right, Blaine?
Yep.
I think we're going to regret it on this side. right in the sauce. That should do it. So that's one. Then basically you rotate this around to get the other four started, or the other three started. And then what I did to tighten them up is I sort of crisscrossed. I went from here to here, and then here to there, and then I went back over them with the breaker bar just to snug them up real nice. And essentially that is it. Once you get those tightened in, you put your brakes back on, and you're good to go. So, yeah, I think that about covers it. Did I miss anything, Blaine? I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're good. We recorded all that, right?